Don't give up, you know it's true. You gotta do what you wanna do.
Hello, welcome to UPSC Gangsters. This is Arjunarian, and I'll be taking you through the editorial analysis for the date 11th October from the Hindu newspaper as usual. Right? So let's get started. The first editorial, the heading says, "Focus should be on scaling up the use of innovations." The newly appointed Deputy Director General for Programs at the WHO says her elevation reflects on the growing importance of India in global health diplomacy. The heading in itself is a point, alright? So, we have a personality here in India who has been made the Deputy Director General of the World Health Organization, alright? And her views, her interview is basically what this editorial is about. I'm just taking you through those facts and the important points of it, alright? So let's get started. Broadly, I'm completely in alignment with his priorities, which also reflect my belief that the involvement of patient voices and community and civil society are extremely important for public health gains. So when she says he, she's actually referring to the Director General of the WHO. Alright, she's the Deputy Director General, right? So something like she comes under the main Director General. So he's also into the same things she's into. They're having the same views. That's what she's saying. Nothing can be achieved without this. Look at dengue. For instance, the government can only do so much because the dengue carrying mosquito are breeding within and outside people's homes. So unless there is a mass movement to eliminate breeding sources, it is unlikely we can control dengue and other vector-borne diseases. So, this one point you have to remember, because dengue as such cannot be eliminated, right? So, dengue can be eliminated only with eliminating the breeding sources. So, unless and until you have vaccines and all that, those things might actually prevent you from those mosquito bites that would create dengue. But as of now, we do not have such things, and the only way you can do it is to stop their breeding, and that is kind of not so easy, because wherever water is stagnant, those mosquitoes come and breed. So getting rid of stagnant water is really a huge issue. It's not like winter, and it's not like the North American countries or the European countries where stagnant water will not create anything because of the low temperatures there. No, it's not like that. It's kind of pretty bad for us. Alright? Balancing the needs and demands of intellectual property protection vis-a-vis access and equity in that access is going to be a challenge. Alright, so again, the intellectual property protection access. So India is not having some strict laws about intellectual property clauses, right? Because of the generic medicine industry of India. So therefore that will also be a bone of contention in the WHO. And she's saying, so going against the intellectual property rights, it will be hard to actually spread equity and access to everybody. Alright, so because intellectual property rights, you have to pay the royalty and all that to that person who has actually the composition of the medicine, right? So if you're not doing that, then the medicines will be cheap. But if you're doing that, the medicines will not be cheap, and it will not be accessible to the entire population. That is what she's trying to say. The WHO is the only agency that can be central in that. There have been successes like the medicines patent pool, but a lot more needs to be done, including drugs for non-communicable diseases, cancers, and vaccines, which are now going to be developed for emerging infections. Alright, so this is basically a point which she's saying lots of things needs to be done for the future of cancer preventing vaccines and non-communicable diseases and all that. Non-communicable diseases are those things that do not carry over from one person to another person. It just happens. So that is non-communicable diseases. So for that also something needs to be done. Emerging epidemics will have to be a key aspect. Vector-borne diseases are a serious concern for the entire developing world. Southeast Asia and South America have suffered from chikungunya, Zika, dengue, and we don't know what's next. Alright, so the worst affected by epidemics. So the emerging epidemics and the worst affected, those countries that are the regions that are worst affected by the epidemics are certainly South America and Southeast Asian nations. Alright, they have been adapting themselves to changing ecosystem. The vectors are smart. Alright, yes, that you should remember, because one after the other new diseases just come up. So the vectors are smart, which is an important point you should note it. Alright, vectors are smart and they are adaptable. This you would have noticed when you're buying the All Out or some the Good Night and all that, those mosquito repellents. For some time they might work, and for the majority of the time they will not work. After some time they actually do not work, and then you have the updated versions of the All Out or Good Night or whatever. They just adapt themselves so quickly, and that is a huge problem in countering them. So continue. As urbanization expands, the whole thing is going to spread. Again, science will have to provide the solutions. There are certain things that are binding, agreements that the countries have finalized and signed. For instance, the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control and the Emergency Health Regulations. So, in WHO, there are certain things that are binding. Do note it. WHO, whatever they are doing, is not at all binding, but certain things are binding in WHO, and that thing is the Convention on Tobacco Control. Alright, Convention on Tobacco Control and Emergency Health Regulations. Alright, do note it. There are certain provisions that are binding on the member nations. Most of the others are non-binding, more recommendatory in nature, but most nations take them seriously and find ways to implement them. For instance, for achieving sustainable development goals, there have been a number of guidelines drawn up and frameworks and indicators issued. Most countries are adapting them. HIV treatment is a good example. Only when the WHO said ARTS should be given in developing countries and launched the 3x5 initiative that the program was scaled up. Alright, so ART is a process with which you can actually try to limit the thakat of HIV. Alright, so that was compulsorily done only when a framework and all that was kind of pushed to the developing countries. For instance, in the sector of non-communicable diseases, recent surveys have shown that there are a large number of people in the pre-diabetic and pre-hypertensive stage. If you have 60 million people with diabetes, you also have 70 million pre-diabetics. Alright, so pre-diabetics is a condition where you're gonna get diabetes, you're on the way of getting diabetes. Alright, so 60 million diabetic patients are there, 70 million more who are pre-diabetics are there, which means that they're gonna be diabetic in future. Dr. V. Mohan's data from Chennai, for example, shows very high conversion from the pre-diabetes to diabetes stage. And it has also started affecting the poor because the food choices available to them are limited to a carbohydrates rich diet, as they cannot afford fruits and vegetables and the diversity of protein. This is a very important point you should note, how the poor people are also affected by diabetes and all, because you might be of the opinion that poor people will not have diabetes, right? because they do not have access to sugar and all that. They do not eat so much of sweets and all that. But the truth is it is wrong. They are actually relying on carbohydrate rich diet, right, which is supposed to be rice or potatoes and all that, all those things that are cheap, coincidentally carbohydrate rich. And carbohydrates, beyond a point, it becomes sugar on the body, in the body, all right. So the carbohydrates actually gets converted into sugar, and that's where the problem starts, and that's why the poor people are also affected by it. And these are the factors, so do remember. I think some policy measures are being considered, like labeling of food for high salt, sugar and fat content, higher taxes on these products, some kind of package labeling to indicate whether it is a healthy choice or not, micronutrient fortification, mandatory fortification of milk, oil, rice, wheat, and double fortification of soil will help eliminate micronutrient deficiencies. So, about micronutrient deficiencies, please note her points, alright. Micronutrient deficiencies are those vitamins and all that, alright. Iron and zinc and all that, sodium and all that, all those salts, they all come under the category of micronutrient deficiencies. Micronutrients are needed only in some sort of some trace amounts in milligrams, alright, 0.01 milligrams and all that, but still they have a huge effect. And fortification is a process by which you add these micronutrients to a food material, alright. So she has suggested mandatory fortification of milk, oil, rice, wheat, double fortification of soil, salt, etc. All these things, if done, might prevent diabetes in future. And these things are also in the very much within the access of the poor people too, right? So it will really help them out too. One of my life's ambitions would be to see research thrive in medical colleges in the country. Okay, this is another important point which you should note. Medical research is currently not happening in India, right? So it's not like the foreign universities. You would have wondered, right, how the University of Massachusetts, University of California, the London University and all that, you have those things that win awards, and scientists and students and a group of professors have found this, they have invented that, they have done a research on this and all that. You would have heard, and you would never hear something like this from our medical colleges here. Not like Delhi Medical College or the MGR University of Chennai or the Bombay Medical College and all that. No, you will not hear something like that, because research is not currently going well. I mean, it's not even there in the medical universities, alright. So that's why she says that is not happening now. We need to bring focus into research even during the training stage. We are hoping it will take off in the next year or so, alright. So research should be coming in even in the training stage, after you're done with your medical degree, when you're trained, right? I mean, which is part of the degree. So even during that stage, you should have some sort of research to it, alright? Some sort of research oriented tasks and all that. So she's saying it's not happening right now, but it's gonna happen very fast in the near future. That's what she's saying. So these are the points in this editorial. Moving on to the next editorial, measuring judicial merit. In making collegium decisions public, the Supreme Court must also reason out its measurement of merit. Well, this editorial is basically about the Supreme Court's not verdict, but its gesture of putting up those things that are taken into account to actually promote a judge or dismiss a judge or whatever, for the appointment of judge, and with those factors that are considered, those factors that have been considered to not recommend somebody for the post of the judge and all that. So it's about that, and it's about questioning the merit of those things. So this is a very a controversial thing. Like in the sense, this editorial is kind of critical. So a lot of points where it is going too critical, I've left it out, and from the prelims and mains perspective, those things that are important, I've taken it. So moving on to it, a controversial collegium. Little wonder then that the collegium continues to court one controversy over another. The latest being the unfortunate transfer of justice Jayant Patel, just as he was on the verge of taking over as the Chief Justice of Karnataka High Court. Some attribute this punishment transfer to his role in the Ishrat Jahan case, where he ordered a CBI inquiry into an alleged encounter killing. Alright, so this is pretty straight, and this Jayant Patel's transfer has actually got some eyebrows rising. Alright, he was supposed to be the High Court Chief Justice of Karnataka High Court, but suddenly he was transferred to another place. Alright, so there are speculations about it. All of this forces us to ask that eternally enigmatic question: how do we judge our judges? For this we must have some measurable metric of merit, and a transparent one at that. One that is well reasoned and turns on how well the judge in question reasons. In the Justice Patel case, one of the key demands by a local bar association which protested the seemingly arbitrary transfer was, pray, what are the reasons? As a famous US judge once noted. Alright, you have to note this down. The political branches of government claim legitimacy by election and judges by reason. So this you have to note down what the US judge has said when the question of how your decisions are always correct. What is how should we believe that your judgments are always right? So when such a question was asked and some case was going on, the US judge replied in this fashion. Alright? Given that the Collegium has operated in a shroud of secrecy for more than 2 decades now, this is nothing short of revolutionary. Unfortunately, this path-breaking development for judicial transparency falls a bit short on some counts. For one, it does not detail the metric or methodology for measuring judicial merit. Note this down. So these are the shortcomings, alright? What and all are not actually mentioned. Alright, so what and all you will not get to know by the Supreme Court's whatever the Supreme Court reveals on the website. Alright. Rather, while assessing the quality of judgments penned by the candidate as a trial court judge, it simply states, as regards Srimati T. Krishnavalli, Judgment Committee has awarded her judgments as good average, and similarly for Shri R. Pongayappan. Alright. Only these things are mentioned, that her judgments have been gone through, alright, her past judgments, and they are good average, and therefore she is qualified to take the next role. Access to law means nothing if it takes specialized legal genius to determine the essence of a ruling. Given the verbosity of some decisions, it is well nigh impossible to locate the ratio of a decision. Legal terminology for the operative part of the judgment. Alright, they're talking about the court language basically. So there are certain situations where the court language is too complicated and you wouldn't even understand the judgment. Alright, so illustratively, the Ayodhya verdict ran into more than 1,000 pages, guaranteeing that not many people in the entire country would have read it. So this is another example of how the judges can take their own liberty for granted. Alright, the Ayodhya judgment ran for 1,000 pages. Alright, so who the hell will read that? Who the hell will even have the time to read that and even try to understand that? So this seems like it was deliberate, and that's what they're questioning here. March this year, the Supreme Court castigated a High Court judge for rendering a decision in language so dense that it bordered on the mystical. But a quick search revealed that just a week ago, the very same judge issued another decision in similarly spirited language. So another thing, alright, again, a judge a High Court judge gave out a judgment with a language that was not at all understandable, and it was very dense, it seems. So a lot of things that were involved in it, so nobody understood, and Supreme Court actually kind of condemned it. alright, saying like, what the hell have you written, do not repeat this. But they just found out that he just did it again. Just a week back he did it again. Alright, so this is how his criticism is the one who wrote this editorial about the collegium system and what it does not address, and this much is enough for us as of now. Now going on now to the next editorial. The title says is Deep Sea Fishing, the Silver Bullet. The Parkway conflict requires a multi-dimensional approach. So this editorial is about the Tamil Nadu fishers being held by the Sri Lankan Navy for crossing the waters, alright, so the international border waters. So when this happens, there's a lot of tiff and a lot of misunderstanding between the Indian government and the Sri Lankan government, alright, and the Park Strait is actually that strait that actually divides Indian mainland from Sri Lanka, right? So that is why Park Bay conflict is mentioned here. So getting started, on September 8th, the Tamil Nadu Fisheries University TNFU organized a one-day workshop in Chennai on deep sea fishing, the aim being to promote deep sea fishing as an alternative to trawling in the Park Bay. Alright, so note this point. So they are promoting deep sea fishing to actually avoid the confrontation with the Sri Lankan Navy and the Sri Lankan fishermen. Alright, so that is the latest thing that has been pushed by the Tamil Nadu Fisheries University. Proponents of deep sea fishing argue that lure of better catch in far off seas and avoiding the risks of cross-border fishing in Sri Lankan waters will ensure its success. But is it as simple as that? Alright, so they're saying deep sea fishing is gonna get them a lot of catch, and they will not be caught by the Sri Lankan Navy and all that. So that is a win-win situation, right? So this editorial actually questions that motive. Is it really so? Deep sea fishing has always been an integral part of country's Blue Revolution vision to exploit fishing resources to the maximum within the 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. So many facts in this you have to note down. The first fact being the Blue Revolution. Alright, so the Blue Revolution is about the fisheries. Okay, so it's not about anything else, not about the water and all that, irrigation and all that, it's about the fisheries. So deep sea fishing is also part of the Blue Revolution, it's supposed to be. Alright, and the next one, what you should notice about the exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles. Alright, so keep that in mind. 200 nautical miles is the exclusive economic zone for a country. Within that, it can do whatever it wants. Within the 200 nautical mile zone, we can extract from the deep sea, we can drill, we can catch fish, we can do whatever we want. But beyond that, it is international waters. Alright. The present plan in the Park Bay is to extract 2,000 trawlers from the bay and replace them with deep sea vessels that fish in the Bay of Bengal and Gulf of Mannar. So this is the plan. Alright, note it down. So 2,000 trawlers are gonna be replaced with deep sea vessels. Alright, so that is gonna target Bay of Bengal and Gulf of Mannar. The time period for this transition is 3 years, 2017 to 2020, with 500 boats to be replaced in the first year alone. The central and Tamil Nadu governments have committed rupees 800 crore and rupees 320 crore respectively. So remember what push the central government and state governments are doing. Alright, it's not something like the university is doing alone, it's not its brainchild completely and all that. It's actually a push from the central government as well as the state government, and they have committed so much of money for it. Alright, each vessel will be filled with tuna long lining and gill netting and have a unit cost of around rupees 80 lakh. Of this unit cost, trawl owners have to only pay rupees 8 lakh upfront and rupees 16 lakh through a loan from the Pandian Grama Bank. The balance of rupees 56 lakh will be a subsidy shared by the state and central governments. So, just one example of the rural bank in Tamil Nadu, right? That is the Pandian Grama Bank. So they are going to fund the initiative for the fishermen, and rupees 56 lakh is going to be borne by the government, alright, as in lines with the subsidy. So this is basically the facts about it. Next side heading says complex issue. The Park Bay fishing conflict has figured prominently in high-level meetings between India and Sri Lanka. The origins of the conflict are complex and it is difficult to resolve. The main issue is what to do with the oversized fleet of Tamil Nadu trawlers that fish regularly in Sri Lankan waters. Alright? Oversized thing, you have to remember, that is a huge problem for us, alright? The oversized fleet from Tamil Nadu. So that has been a problem for them, for the state government of Tamil Nadu also to control. Next point. The main issue is what to do with the oversized fleet of Tamil Nadu trawlers that fish regularly in Sri Lankan waters, often damaging the boats and gear of small-scale Tamil fishers from the northern province of Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankan government has not only passed legislation banning trawling, but its navy has also been vigilantly patrolling the international maritime boundary line, capturing Indian trawl boats and fisheries. The plan is to remove as many trawl vessels from the Park Bay as possible. Prospective beneficiaries of the deep sea fishing project should possess a registered seaworthy trawl vessel of over 12 meters in length, and that must be scrapped or disposed of outside the Park Bay. Alright, to avail this benefits, alright, to avail this loan and buy a new deep sea vessel, right, what they have to do is they are supposed to dispose, they are supposed to scrap the old trawlers that they have, and that too it must be taken care of outside the Park Bay. So that is the requisite thingy to avail the loan. Disposed vessel should also have been physically verified. Equally important, new replacement tuna long liner boats cannot trawl or operate in the Park Bay. The government is now creating a new deep sea fishing harbour at Mukayur, located in just south of the Park Bay in the Gulf of Mannar. Just you have to note down why this is created in the first place, that also we should remember, alright. So the deep sea fishing harbour has been set up in Mukayur. This is to accommodate those deep sea fishing vessels, alright. So this is why this has been created by the government. Priority is to given to the owners who have had their boats apprehended or damaged in Sri Lanka. Beneficiaries are not allowed to sell their boats within 5 years of obtaining them, though it is unclear how that will be enforced. Alright, unclear how it is going to be enforced. Just like how can you stop someone from selling their boats, right? Is their right to sell and all that. So maybe a contract will be drawn up and all that. So that is anyway not mentioned. Next side heading says a slippery slope. Administrators and scientists alike have raised questions. First, there are sufficient stocks of fish in the adjacent waters of Bay of Bengal and Gulf of Mannar to make deep sea fishing economically viable for a large and new fleet of vessels? And do Park Bay trawl fishers who are used to one-day fishing have sufficient skills and an interest for deep sea fishing? The Indian government report of the working group of revalidating the potential of fishery resources in the Indian economic zone suggests that oceanic regions have a maximum potential yield of 208,000 tons. Alright, so this is the numbers, this is the factual numbers, that the potential for deep sea fishing on the Bay of Bengal and Gulf of Mannar side. Alright, that is the number is coming up to 208,000 tons. Importantly, however, while report highlights that oceanic stocks are not fully exploited, it does not state where the remaining oceanic stocks in the Indian Ocean exist, nor whether this might be in Bay of Bengal or the Gulf of Mannar. It's very important. It is a very general number that has been given, alright? The entire Indian Ocean has been taken into account and this number has been arrived at. And the question here is, how much is there on the Bay of Bengal and the Gulf of Mannar? So how will deep sea fishing be viable if they do not know at which place you have the maximum yield, right? Moreover, the report warns that oceanic resources are transboundary and hence are targeted by a number of other countries too. So the report's warning is also there, meaning deep sea fishing is also like along the border of the other countries' EEZs, like exclusive economic zones. So they will also be exploiting the marine resources, meaning they will also be fishing. So what is left with the competition, whatever that comes, the number might actually go even lower. In fairness, the authorities have taken note of training needs and are setting up special facilities in collaboration with TNFU and Central Institute of Fisheries, Nautical and Engineering Training. Applicant trawl owners are expected to employ a few specialized workers from the operational deep sea fishing fleet in Tutur, at least for the initial period of operation. The question of what will become of trawl crews remains largely unaddressed, potentially jeopardizing the local economy of the region. For trawl fishers, the main concern is whether deep sea fishing is a sound investment or not. Some fishermen have expressed doubts about the high operational costs of deep sea fishing and the loan repayment schedule imposed by the Pandian Grama Bank. Therefore, they have been pressurizing the government to minimize the applicants' financial contribution. Alright? So the whatever contribution they are supposed to make, that initial amount that you are supposed to pay, and those 16 lakhs that they are supposed to pay as a loan and certain duration, even that they want the government to reduce, alright, and they want the government to bear more than 56 lakhs, alright, else it won't be viable, they think. Monitoring is important. Whether deep sea fishing will reduce the Park Bay fishing conflict depends entirely on the downsizing of the existing trawl fleet. On paper, the necessary safeguards are in place, but rules are not always followed. The government will have to ensure that remaining vessels are not upgraded in size or engine horsepower, as many trawl owners in Park Bay have been increasing their engine capacities surreptitiously well beyond legal limits. So now we have to know there are certain legal limits for the trawl sizes and the horsepower of the engine. So all these are already there, rules are already there, and it hasn't worked in the past, and how is gonna work suddenly now? That's the question. Alright? Equally of concern is the Tamil Nadu Fisheries Department's capacity to monitor, control and carry out surveillance of the process of decommissioning. Regulations have always existed but have rarely been implemented judicially. The deep sea vision, moreover, is monomaniacal and no other solutions to trawling offered. The Park Bay concept requires a multi-dimensional approach. Various other solutions such as buybacks, alternative livelihoods and skill development need to be rolled out with the simultaneous focus on a strong MCS system, alright, which is supposed to be the surveillance, alright, monitor, control and carry out surveillance system. Only then this intransigent fishing conflict be finally resolved. Alright, so laws are already there. Basically what this editorial finally comes to the point is, laws are already there. If we were following the laws, alright, judicially, by implementing it well and operating it well, you wouldn't have had this problem in the first place. So the new schemes are not kind of gonna work if the rules are not actually followed. That's what basically he says and ends the editorial with. Moving on to the next editorial. The title says the wrong options. GST and demonetization are not the structural reforms that will boost the economy. So this entire editorial is very, very critical about demonetization and GST, which we don't need as a UPSC aspirant. We have to see the positives that come out of it, of course. Of course, in your interview it might help, but even there you're supposed to lay down facts rather than your own opinion. If you lay down the facts, they will be on your side, and your argument will be strong and it will make sense. Alright, I've just taken the important points from this editorial that might be required for our prelims, mains and even interview. Support for so-called reforms like GST and demonetization comes from the underlying belief that a government awash in tax revenues will be able to boost economic growth. Alright, so obviously he's saying that it is a wrong thing. It is a myth that the government with good tax collection can actually better economic growth. Alright, so awash in tax revenues will be able to boost economic growth. That is a myth he's saying. Alright, so next line. Sadly, the fact remains that no country has ever taxed its way to prosperity. So this is history basically, this is economics basically. So no country that has actually collected tax properly and all that depended on tax collection has registered a strong economic growth. Okay, in fact, it is not the lack of sufficient tax revenues that has held back India or any other country for that matter that has suffered the ill effects of socialism over the years. Instead, it is simply the lack of economic freedom which impedes ordinary individuals from seeking to improve their economic status without any interference from the state. This last point you should remember. So it's not basically about the tax revenues that are going to the government that will boost the economy or make the nation strong. It is supposed to be citizen centric, alright, oriented towards the ordinary individuals. So when the ordinary individuals are able to make money properly and the ease of doing business, or the access to work and job is easy and not with any kind of many hurdles and opposition and all that will actually boost the economy. So the power, even for the economics perspective, even for the nation to become strong economically, the power actually comes from the people, and then it travels to the government and ultimately the nation. So that's how it works. And that was this is the last point from this editorial that is useful for us. Alright, so just know that taxing and covering the majority of the population under taxes and collection of taxes without any leakages and all that, they have not been responsible for our country's prosperity anywhere. Alright, basically it is about keeping the citizen happy, making sure that they are having a proper salary and all that. So only that will actually boost the economy of a country. These are the important points in that editorial. Going to the next one. Alright. Well-deserved nudge. Richard Thaler has been crucial in putting the human at the heart of economics. So this is about the recent Nobel Prize from the economics side. Alright. So how he has actually introduced a new perspective into economic studies. That's what this editorial is about. Going into it. For decades, American economist Richard Thaler has studied how decision-making deviates from rational behavior in the real world, and how this can actually be incorporated into economic modeling. His analysis married economics to human psychology. Have this in mind. So, his analysis actually married human married a human psychology with economics. So something like economic psychology, a new stream, right? So continuing, it is for his pioneering contributions to this field that Professor Thaler was awarded the Economics Nobel on Monday. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences cited his analysis of decision makers deviate systematically from rational behavior as conceived in traditional economic theory. For instance, individuals experience bounded rationality due to cognitive limitations. So, individuals actually react not only because of the whatever that happens from the economics perspective alone. There are a lot of other things that can push or influence an individual's behavior. So this line is actually meant for that. So there are many cognitive factors. Cognitive factors mean there are many factors. Alright, so if you're like introducing some economic reform like demonetization, or if you're gonna bring the repo rate down, policy rate or whatever, it doesn't mean it should necessarily affect the population in the desired way from the economic theory angle. Alright, so maybe he's still purchasing more, maybe repo rate has been brought down and the cash is more in the economy, but still people are not buying. Alright, still the production has not gone up and still the demand has not gone up. So that way the economic theory is actually at fault because it hasn't considered the human aspect of it. Alright, individuals, how they react and what and all factors are actually affecting them, and why the policy rate changes will not be affecting them. So from that angle, if you're not looking at it, it's going to be a problem, because at the end of the day it is involving a human, right? So if you're not considering how they're going to behave and you do not have a theory for that, your policies will be wrong. Alright, it might work sometimes and most of the times it will not work. So for instance, individuals experience bounded rationality due to cognitive limitations. 2. They have social preferences such as caring for others. And 3. They sometimes lack self-control. These are situations that every individual can relate to. Alright, for all these things, these are all the factors that would affect an individual's choice of spending or saving and all that. Not only from the economics point alone, there are a lot of other things which define a human being, right? So therefore all these things also has to be considered to understand this economic behavior. So there are situations that every individual can relate to. These are situations every individual can relate to. In explaining the relevance of Professor Thaler's work and their decision to award him the prize, the committee highlighted its everyday relevance. Consider, for instance, the existence of social preferences. It would be rational for a shop to increase the price of umbrellas on a rainy day, but customers would probably think of this as an unfair or exploitative policy if they were aware of the regular price. Their preference for fairness is thus a factor that keeps the shop from increasing the price of umbrellas according to the weather, when rational behavior and traditional economic theory would warrant an increase. So this is the thing. So during the rainy season, if producer is going to increase the price of the umbrella, according to the economics theory, they are supposed to get a lot of profit out of it, and people will anyway buy, right? So that is the traditional economic theory. But what happens is the people will be aware of the normal prices, right? So morally they'll be thinking that this is not a good guy, so he's actually exploiting us, and he's looking for more profits, and therefore let's not buy from him. So when this human rational factor comes in, obviously his sales go down and his profits go down, right? So here economic theory is of no use, because according to economic theory, what he is doing, he's not going to get the result he was supposed to get. So next one. It is through such applications that behavioral economics has made economics as a whole more accessible and familiar. Richard Thaler had, as the Nobel Committee put it, made economics more human. In a 2008 book Nudge, Professor Thaler and Cass Sunstein show how behavioral economics can be used in policy making to influence behaviors. It is here that they introduce the concept of libertarian paternalism. Alright, so libertarian paternalism is considering the human aspect of economic policies. Alright, so just remember this line. This will be very helpful for your mains answers. Alright, so libertarian paternalism. So this is something that the policymakers should consider for a successful economic policy. That's what has been suggested. So, continuing, where choice, the concept of libertarian paternalism, where choice architects influence the behavior of individuals to make their lives longer, healthier, and better, but in a way that gives individuals the freedom to not participate in arrangements that are not to their taste. And with governments slowly incorporating it into policy, behavioral economics has not been restricted to campuses. Alright, so this is the new skill that has come up and that is gaining traction right now, which is known as behavioral economics. So the governments all over the world are also considering this concept. Alright, because at the end of the day they want their economic policy to be effective, right? So the governments are considering this policy, this ideology too. That's it with this editorial. The next editorial title says Foggy Thinking. Delhi's firecracker ban may not work any better than Punjab's stubble burning ban 8. Right, so this is a critical article about the Delhi's Supreme Court of India's ban on firecrackers during Diwali in Delhi and NCR region. Alright, let's get on to it. I've just taken the important points, right, because it is a critical editorial, so therefore. The major sources of pollution in the NCR have been clear enough to drive policy changes. While their relative contributions are still indeterminate, these include construction dust, vehicular pollution, waste burning, generators, and crop residue burning in the Indo-Gangetic plains. So these are the reasons why there is pollution, high levels of pollution in Delhi. You have to note this down because you have to know to give a proper answer, right? So the relative contributions, these are including the crop burning and the vehicular pollution and the construction dust, because Delhi is a place where construction goes on 24/7. There are just new buildings coming up again and again, residential buildings the most. Alright, so Delhi is a place where they will not even leave an inch of land as a waste, unused. They will try to construct on it and get high rental revenues. Delhi's economy actually runs on house rental revenues, and that is why you don't find many intellectuals coming from Delhi. Education is not a very high priority for the Delhi residents here. Everybody takes to humanities and the easier subjects rather than science and mathematics and all that. So that's how it is here. So construction dust is a major pollutant. To tackle each of these will take decisive and persistent policy actions, not panic-driven and ill-considered bans. Take the 2015 ban on crop residue burning in Punjab and Haryana, for example. 2 years later, farmers continue to violate it because the state governments have still not taken the steps required to solve the underlying problem, the high cost of cleaning the paddy stubble instead of burning it to prepare the field to sow wheat. Alright, the government has just passed a law banning the burning of crop residue, but they have not given the solution of what to do with the crop residue otherwise, right? So if burning is not the option, the government should have introduced a plan which is equally feasible, equally cheaper, where they can dispose of the crop residue. But the government has not done that. They have simply just passed a law banning the burning of the crop residue, which is not going to help. Continuing, 2 years later, farmers continue to violate it. The high cost of cleaning the paddy stubble instead of burning it to prepare field to sow wheat. Though the government has offered subsidies on a machine called Happy Seeder, which doesn't require a stubble-free field to plant wheat, farmers haven't taken to it as burning remains cheaper. Alright, Happy Seeder, even without cleaning the residues, alright, the Happy Seeder equipment will be able to seed properly. But farmers are still not okay with it because burning is still cheaper than the Happy Seed initiative. Alright, so the Happy Seeder, which doesn't require stubble-free plan, and farmers haven't taken to it as burning remains cheaper. Another option is biomass energy plants that buy paddy straw from farmers for use in generating power. Alright, so the paddy straw, which is the leftover residues, can be used for bio plants, right? And that is the other option, biomass energy plants. That should be given a push, but sadly even that is not happening too. Alright, so the only answer is for the Punjab. This in turn leaves farmers wary. The only answer is for the Punjab and Haryana governments to move purposefully on the solutions they know will work, just as the only option for the Delhi government is to raise awareness on the impact of firecrackers, while also tackling vehicular pollution, construction dust and other pollution sources. In the absence of these less dramatic but more feasible solutions, it is unlikely a firecracker sale ban will avert the kind of health emergency that struck Delhi last year. Last year the pollution levels was really high, right? But finally what they're saying here is that single day is not responsible for the alarming high pollution levels in Delhi that even caused a lot of risks to health. So these are the important points from this editorial and the entire day. Please note it down, and I will see you with the next editorial analysis. Till then, take care.